I have a question about vaccine implementation and discharges. So on August 23rd, the Secretary put out the memo saying that the COVID vaccine would become mandatory for service members. Between a few weeks and over a month, it's like more like 6-7 weeks later, the services started adding them to the battery of vaccines that you get at basic training, which means that for over a month, there were people coming into the military not getting vaccinated against COVID, and now they're being discharged either mid-training or finishing training without reporting to their first unit. So all of those tens of thousands of dollars to recruit them and train them are basically lit on fire. Is that implementation rollout and that delay between the announcement and requiring vaccines for trainees, is that an oversight as part of the implementation policy? Is that the cost of doing business while you are trying to implement new policy like this? What's how did this happen?
It's not that it had happened. You make it sound like it was some sort of happenstance. The Secretary, as you go back, you look at that memo, he made it very clear that he wanted a period of time to allow the services to plan for implementation. I mean, this was a major rudder shift. You all remember when we were talking about it being voluntary, and to make it mandatory, that requires process changes. It requires some policy changes, and it certainly required the services to make sure they had enough stockpiles and that they had implementing guidelines for their subordinate commanders in place. And so the Secretary felt it was only appropriate and prudent to give them some time. And that's why he frankly sent that memo, saying it's coming, so you need to get ready for it. And that's not uncommon. We do that all the time when there's a major policy shift at the building. You got to give them time to get ready. And so we did that. To your first point about, well, okay, you brought guys in when it was in this sort of intervening period before the mandate was actually in place, but after it had been announced, and is that a waste? And I would say no, not at all. I mean, we brought these individuals in good faith and want them to succeed in the military, and the best way for them to continue to be able to do that, at least in terms of their physical health with respect to the pandemic, is to get vaccinated. And it's back to what we said before, a lawful order. It's not uncommon for us to make vaccines mandatory after somebody has come in when something new develops, and so it's part of being a service member. When you're ordered to get a vaccine, you got to get that vaccine. So no, we would not consider this, as you said, some sort of fire or something. I mean, it's just the normal process, Megan.
So we're talking about two different memos. You're mentioning the August 9th memo that was a heads up to the services saying, hey, I want to make this mandatory, everybody get ready. On August 23rd is when he said, okay, we're doing mandatory. But even before that, you had said from the podium here in July, we're thinking maybe FDA approval, we'll make it mandatory. And also for any of the services, it was always voluntary while this was, under an EUA, but the expectation, if you are, a leader in the military, was that this would eventually become mandatory. They could have started working on these policies a year ago, and they could have at least, for trainees, for recruits, on day one, on August 23rd, August 24th, said, okay, today we're gonna make everybody who's getting ready to ship to boot camp acknowledge, the way you acknowledge when you ship that you're going to get vaccinated, acknowledge that COVID-19 is going to be part of this requirement. They could have done that on August 23rd. They didn't. For the Marine Corps, they waited until October 14th, and so that was nearly 2 months of people coming to the Marine Corps saying, I don't want to get the COVID vaccine, and now they're being kicked out because they still won't get it. I
don't know that people joined the Marine Corps and said, oh, by the way, before I sign this, I'm not getting the vaccine. I'm not sure how often that happened. I would just tell you that, again, this was a major rudder shift here, if I could use the naval terminology here, and the Secretary felt it was important to give the services time to prepare for that and to be able to implement that. And again, Megan, I do take your point, and I don't mean to sound like I don't or being obstinate, but it is a lawful order, and
but it wasn't
once
a
you get
order
it
on August 23rd. That's what I'm saying.
No, but that doesn't mean that it isn't still valid once it's given. Again, we would not consider it a waste of time to bring these young men and women into the service and get them trained up with the expectation that after they take the oath of office and raise that right hand, that they're going to obey lawful orders. And I would remind, the vast, vast majority are, in fact. I mean, we're up over 91% of the active duty force now that's fully vaccinated. I mean, that's not insignificant. Pierre?
We've seen